Thank you for watching. This is the second episode of Experiences Stories. And in this episode, I'm joined by Richard, who's got a number of experiences to share with us.
Hello, everybody.
I'll just let you go ahead and tell us your story.
Okay. Well, there's a few, but the two that I was going to mention, one has a video link, which I'll go into later, which I sent you before. But the first one was one that's always stuck with me, which was back in like the sort of late 80s. I would have been around maybe 6 or 7, between 6 and 8, that kind of era. I remember being in the house and was watching television, and all of a sudden, my dog at the time had got off the chair that he used to sit in, and he'd gone and sort of out of the corner of my eye, he'd gone and sat down, and then never thought anything of it. About 10 minutes later, as I was sort of watching the screen, he was still sat in the corner where he was, peering right at the corner of the room, like he was just concentrating, almost like he was a statue, just like intensely looking at the corner. And then all of a sudden, I went over to him, tried to, see what was going on. And his name was Prince, and I was saying, Prince, what's wrong with you? You okay, Prince? And then I was getting upset because he wasn't talking. Obviously dogs don't talk, obviously, but as a dog lover, we all know dogs can communicate to a level with his master. And I was sort of like getting it to do things, and all of a sudden it started growling and really sort of snarling. And I was getting really worried now. I'm screaming to my mum, asking it for help. I want to find out what's going on. I thought the dog was having a stroke or something. And then all of a sudden, it just wouldn't stop moving. When I tried to grab hold of it, it was physically like still, like a statue. Anyway, my mum went upstairs because she thought somebody was breaking into the house because we have a flat roof. And the idea was that all the houses had flat roofs, so one person could jump on the house at one corner, run straight across, get into the bathroom window, and so on. As she went upstairs, she said, "Oh my God, come upstairs! Look at this!" And we went upstairs, and when we looked, there was a big red light in the sky, like I don't know, maybe the size of what you see the moon from a distance, but bright red, like the sun would be. And this would have been around probably 10 o'clock time, because it would have been probably school days. I think it was like on a weekend time, so it would have been going into the Monday, sort of Sunday night, sort of Monday time, and it was late. And looked outside, and there was this big red light in the sky, and it wouldn't move, just didn't move. And the dog was obviously looking in that direction from the house into the corner. As that, we watched it for about 5 to 10 minutes. As we went back downstairs to see what the dog was doing, it was still doing the same thing. And then eventually when we went back up, it had gone. The light had gone. So we rang the police and said we'd seen something in the sky and so on. Police brought down quite a few number of units. They brought down 2 vans, riot vans, and then a few squad cars, and they had the dogs with them and stuff. They checked around for the area. They said to my family privately that even though people laugh at this subject, so we take this very seriously. At that point, I didn't know what to think, because obviously I'm a child. I didn't know what was going on. But when I came to think about years later, we sort of, it always makes me think, well, it probably was something government, top secret kind of thing. But why would the dog react the way it did? And I've always been interested to see how UFO stories match up, because obviously people never mention stuff to do with animals and how they react. Or sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But on this occasion, this was a really interesting situation that I thought I'd share with people to see if anyone else has had this situation happen.
That's pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, the police coming's quite. You don't hear that very often where they actually come out with a team, try and look into
looking back, I'd probably, if I had to put money on it, I'd say it was probably some kind of top secret. So they've got some sort of a special forces team in the area, and the role is to drop in, go into the area, and then the police try and find out where they are and see what their testing abilities are in case. Because during the Cold War, obviously, it was the height of the Cold War in the 80s, so the threat of nuclear annihilation was quite big then. The dog incident makes me wonder if any sort of ex-military people could come out there and say, well, we've got evidence to prove that we can talk or control animals with technology, frequencies and stuff like that. Because everything's Nikola Tesla, one of my heroes, used to say energy, frequency, and vibration was the 3 main corporate things of the universe. If you construct those 3 things together, if you look into the film Men Who Stare at Goats with George Clooney, that's based on the principle of being able to stare at a goat. I think they're trying to make his heart stop or upload or something. Same thing. I would bet money that it was probably something to do with that. If it's not, then you go into the realm of extraterrestrial and so on. But I tend to sort of focus on the military aspect. But it may well be something of a, extraterrestrial. But who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows?
Did you ever hear anything back from your family, from the police? Did you ever do a follow up, or did they say
No,
there wasn't anything, or
we didn't get any kind of sort of follow up story or ask us to come back. But I don't even remember reading about it in the paper either. I don't think it was in a newspaper or even on the news, because my family were trying to see if the BBC at the time would mentioned it, but there was nothing on TV or the radio. But I mean, someone might be able to go back and look at that. It would have been in the Stone Ferry region of Hull, where I live. So it would have been in like the Stone Ferry area. And you can see it from our house window. It was in the corner. It was a big round perfectly circle, like a 10p piece. I'd say it looked like, if you didn't know what it was, you might say it was the moon, but red. It was a red moon, which there was no moon. Okay, so the moon was over there, a different side, and this was in the corner, and it was just stationary, just there. And very interesting.
What year was that?
Probably in the late 80s. I can't say specifically, but you're talking like 87 to 88, maybe 89. But before the Cold War ended.
I guess that's quite scary for a kid of that age to be see then with the dog and with the police coming and all that.
Yeah, well, my biggest worry was the fact that I saw a film years ago where a dog, it was an American movie, and a dog went crazy and started barking all the time. And the guy who owned it had to get a shotgun and shoot it. And I always thought in the back of my mind, that's what's going to happen to our dog. And I said to my mum, why's the guy shot the dog for? And she said, well, that's what happens. Dogs go crazy sometimes. You have to put them to sleep. And I always assumed that someone would come along and just go boom. So I always tried to keep the dog calm because I always worried that the dog was going to get taken off. So that was my worry. But we don't have that in the UK, thankfully. But still, that was my worry as a child. That if I keep the dog from being crazy.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So obviously, being a young age when you saw that, has that led to your interest in the subject of UFOs or unusual things in the sky, I guess?
Funnily enough, when people come close to what they call a UFO, they tend to have temporary amnesia. So for a number of years, I never even thought of it until all of a sudden something came on TV again, and it kind of re-triggers the memory.
Yeah.
And all I have to do is go downstairs and say, "Oh, Mum, remember that light over that? Oh, we don't live there anymore. It was an old previous house we used to live at." I said, "Remember the light we saw over the old house?" And she'll just go, "Boom! Oh yeah, remember that?" She'll talk about it as if it was yesterday. But funnily enough, we kind of all just forgot about it. But over the years, my dad has been a huge UFO apologist, and I focus mainly on history, 20th century history and stuff like that. Like World War II in particular, but I generalise as well. But most of it's just been the last, say, 10, 15 years I've got into it more seriously. But prior to that, it was kind of like lukewarm. I watched the films. I've always been a Star Wars fan and a Star Trek fan, but now I've kind of look into it more seriously, and I'm happy to debate with people and discuss things at length. So it's a very, very interesting time to live in. The biggest thing is what we're doing right now. People weren't doing this back in the 80s. So if we saw something back in the 80s that I did, I couldn't go on the internet and say, "Have you just seen this?" And everybody else come down and say, "I just saw the same thing." Where now people can do that. And also they can film it as well. So
you sent me a video as well of a more recent sighting that you had.
Yes.
So go ahead, tell me about that one.
It was but me, a friend, and then a friend and his girlfriend. We'd all gone out to Bempton, which is just off the coast of Bridlington, East Yorkshire. And we'd gone out looking for UFOs because we'd gone to a meeting where people had spoken about it, and someone had detailed quite detailed information on Bempton being a hotspot for UFOs. It's linked to it's not linked to it, but it's got a link to it. The Skinwalker Ranch in America is where Native Americans used to be sold off as slaves and so on. Well, in Bempton, in the area, it's an old RAF base. And what the link is there's something going on the planet where there's like a line that goes around. The Skinwalker Ranch line for America goes right across the Atlantic, right across to Britain, and I think it goes through to Denmark and parts of Europe. that link has all those places have similar issues to Skinwalker Ranch. And Bempton has alleged to have had an issue where animals were being mutilated, which had been found. We went up there that night looking for sort of different things. On the first night we went, it was a perfect sky. I have to quickly mention my friend has Mind Melting Mysteries on YouTube. He's posted the video because he filmed it. I tried to film it on my phone, on my video camera, on my photos, but they all came out dark, so I couldn't get a video myself. But the video link is to his video because he has the videos that he does. But he was with us and he videoed it. And what we saw was we was looking out towards the sea, and one of my friend's girlfriends saw a light behind us. I saw a light in front of us. There's a big light on the coast, which is the light that goes out around the sea. That's always going out, so it's not to be mistaken with that. But there was two lights behind us, one in front, and there was a third light over there, and they were clearly moving in unison with each other and moving about. And because of that, we started filming. We was actually going to go home because we was out for about 2 hours. Nothing was happening. It was pretty dark. It was a really good sky, so we was looking at the stars. But what we wanted to see was obviously UFOs. And then on that particular night, about 12 o'clock, they all just went boom. And then all of a sudden, they started flashing up and moving and so on. And we were quite intrigued by it. When we went home, my friend edited the video because he was able to slow it down. And he saw that footage and sent it to us, and we were like, wow, this is amazing. We posted it on the Facebook UFO website. People could see it in great detail, and it's a real video. We haven't faked it. The only thing is it's been slowed down so that you can see it, because the camera was kind of coming down as it was going in, so you miss a little bit. But yeah, it's a very good video. But once again, we don't know what it is, so people need to make their own minds up. There's definitely more to it than just people seeing lights in the sky. I mean, sometimes I thought 95% of all the things in the sky are probably explainable, but there's that really small 5% which make up the UFO.
The 5% we live for.
Yeah, that's the one. That's one that people want to know about. Just to go into another topic, I made a note of different things. There was another incident which wasn't UFO related, but just to give people a sort of a guidance, because we sometimes you hear things and people don't know how to interpret stuff. There was a really good time. Me and my friend was playing in the house on a PlayStation, and all of a sudden the house started shaking really bad. And I thought, was that an earthquake? Because we never had an earthquake before, so I didn't know what to expect. But the house was shaking. Anyway, so I ran through to the other room. Ironically, the same bedroom which I first saw the UFO about 20 years previously. As the house was shaking. As I looked up, I could look through the window. I saw this big, giant light come over the house like this. And I was stunned. I was literally gobsmacked. I couldn't speak. I was like, oh my God. And there was no mobile phones. I couldn't just get a phone and start filming it. But it was moving over the house. The house was still shaking. It was moving across like this. And to me, it looked like a big, giant, octopus. Like it had like a light over it or something. As it started to get further and further away, I was rubbing my eyes. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was actually, I forget if it was 5 or 6 fighter jets all in a line. So one engine. And all together, they made a huge ball of light. And then individually, there was balls of light individually, and then one big ball. And they went over the house really low. If you'd have been stood on your roof, you'd been blown off, because that's how low they was. They were literally probably 20 feet above the house. The whole house was shaking, and that was because of that. But just to give you an idea, I mean, I was literally, I won't say frozen with fear, but I was just literally dumbfounded by the fact that I didn't know what I was looking at. Because I could see through it, but you could clearly see like a pinky reddish over it. And that was just like the heat off the engines. So some people might get mistaken by things like that. I just wanted to mention that because obviously, I like to debate. So I give both sides of the debate, So on that occasion, I was like, oh my God, that's like a UFO. No one's going to believe me. It's clearly an alien spacecraft. And as it flew over, I was like, oh, it's 5 or 6 fighter jets. But it had to be a distance away before I saw it. When it was right over me, I was like, this is a spacecraft. There's nothing more. I didn't know what to... I could see through it. It's so amazing to see. It's like looking at that bottle. I can see you through it, but I can also see there's something there. And this reminded me of like say, of an octopus or a squid or a jellyfish, where you can see through it, but you can also see. Yeah. and it was just moving across the sky like that. And I realized, oh my god, it's actually something real, like a spacecraft. But as it got further away, I could start to make out the engines in the back of the plane, and it was all in a row, like 5 or 6 of them. And the heat of the engine was causing like a light like this, and all those lights together made a really big one. So just to give people like a bit of a grounding, to say, oh wow, actually, it could actually be something.
Yeah,
like that.
definitely.
Yeah.
As investigators, the amount of different sources we have to check, because it could just be so many different things that you just don't usually think about. When you realise, think, oh yeah, that's like pretty simple.
I've heard
realise what it is afterwards.
I've heard like pilots, fighter pilots, say things like, more of American ones than British ones, but I'd heard them say things like they'd fly over a certain camping area in America with pitch black, no lights, and as soon as they turn their engine off, so they glide in, so they go really fast, turn their engine off, and then glide across. And as soon as they get near to someone, they go with the engine and fire it up, and all they see is a light, and they just shoot off. And they think, oh, it's a spacecraft, shoot off really quickly and stuff like that. But yeah, it will do, because it's doing faster than sound, but it's still an aircraft.
Yeah, I think that was on Joe Rogan's podcast. I think I heard a pilot telling that story.
Yeah,
the pilot literally said, like, let's give someone a UFO sighting, and like
that's right. Yeah, I think that was what
they do the maneuvers. Yeah, that's a great episode. That's one with Commander David Fravor about the Tic Tac.
That's right. Yeah,
and the gimbal videos.
What did you make of that video?
I think it's the best we've got, like, in terms of anything over the past 50 years. I think, it's come from the military. They've said they don't know what it is. But the video footage, we've got the pilot's testimony, we've got the radio operators. I just think, in terms of for the ufology, I think that's like been probably the best thing. Some of the
interesting things that I think about in terms of military over the years is the Air Force commander, the chief of the air in the United States, came out and said that when the Space Force was created, he started mentioning, I want some of those weapons, your space weapons you've got, because I need to make sure the Air Force is safe. And the people at the top said, no, you're not getting it. That's for the Space Force. And he says, well, I want to be, protected, and he's not allowed to get it. So it just shows you that the Air Force doesn't have the equipment it needs. I also had other stuff I've seen over the years. That the one in America we saw was like a little tiny silver light. Was all driving down Arizona. I used to live in the States. That's why I've got American flag on my wall, because I used to live there. But it was driving down through Arizona, and we saw this silver light in the sky move real quickly and go around, and go slowly, and then move real quick, and then go slowly and move real quick. My friends at the time, which were from Sweden, they said that it was probably a UFO, but I was like, it's probably just a fighter jet. I'm watching it go slow because it's moving slowly as it turns around, then goes really quickly, and then slows down as it goes around. But there's little things that I've seen over the years, but generally speaking, the two big ones are the video that we've got, and then the one that I mentioned with my dog, because I very rarely hear people mention animals in UFO stuff, and that's why I mention it, because if it wasn't for the dog, I'd just say it was probably a military craft, doing some sort of mission. But because the dog reacted in the way that it did, and my dog was never vicious or growl. He would never sort of, growl or be aggressive. So to do what he did, he was really snarling really bad, like almost like he was snarling at something in the corner of the room. Like perhaps he was snarling at me because I was trying to move him. I don't know. But my gut instinct was he was snarling at something that he could sense. Obviously, he couldn't see it because there's a wall above him. Probably couldn't smell it because the distance was so far. So he had to have heard it. So he must have heard a frequency. He must have heard a sound that was so, so aggressive that it made him go the way it did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for these stories. Definitely a lot to dive into. And thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, you're welcome, mate.
Super fascinating. And if anybody has anything similar, especially with the animal aspect, get in touch. I'd love to hear your story. Because like Rich said, I don't hear any people that have like that sort of interaction with that animal. I'd be interested to see if
anyone from the military had done like an experiment on like by trying to talk to a dog and make it like sit or roll over from a distance, via that technology, because that would answer that question.
Yeah.
But if they
different
can't do it,
frequencies, different like wavelengths.
yeah, exactly, yeah. That's all it is. We only see what 0.05% of all light. So there's a small bandwidth that we see. So there could be all sorts. Well, there is all sorts of the UV light, for example, infrared, night vision. These are all forms of light that we can't see. So there's all sorts of things that could be going on. Dogs can hear at a higher frequency than we can. So it's quite possible the dog was picking up a frequency that we was oblivious to. So, which he probably was. That's my gut instinct. Whether it was man-made or not is the question that I like to question people and ask people, what do you think it is? Leave the debate open.
Yeah, that's it. So always lots to be learning and looking into. Like there's always something that we don't know, and we just try and find out.
Yeah.